Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 22nd of June, comes to you from London. And the energy mix looking very interesting this morning. We've got a new upside target on crude oil, which we'll talk about. And of course, the energy mix is seeing a lot of green on the screen this morning. So rising, so very interesting. First of all, we take a look at the macro situation, just what's going on in the bigger picture around the world, and we look at currencies, commodities, and stock markets, and just see and the effect on bond markets as well. Remembering that I'm running here on Refinitiv Icon, but in Updata you can run on lots of different data sources. You can just configure the ones you want, but I like Refinitiv Icon, and if you're a private user, the Metastock Zenith feed is much the same. So one of the feeds we recommend, you can just configure that as you're running the system. So we see the prices coming in, and first of all, I'm looking at my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute cloud charts with the corresponding point and figure targets. And so this is my long-term, my medium-term, and my short-term view of the market. So dollar is holding on to its gains. It's had a very strong week. We see that big candle there last week, and this is really increasingly now looking like a higher low. So the bottom is higher than the one we saw in January. If we break the level that we saw in April, that is confirmed as the higher high. The Dow theory showing us that the dollar is then on an upward path. We're not quite above the cloud yet on the daily chart, and we're still below on the weekly chart, but on the 60-minute chart we're looking strong. What we should watch for is these downside targets starting to come off the 60-minute chart. We are still bearish on the long-term chart, but it's looking like we might be turning a corner. Looking at the euro, we're sitting at 118.95, weaker on that stronger dollar, of course, and that's also key. Against the yen, the dollar is through the 110 level. The dollar-yen chart is a good lead indicator for what's going on in the dollar, and if we're almost breaking that April high already, so that's giving us a little bit of a sign that the dollar is on a new upward path. Against sterling, we're sitting at 138, and again, just notice how we're really sitting on the cloud there. Really quite key that we are just right on that cloud level just here, so that's quite key as well. So sterling still has upward targets 150 and the high 140s, but that's so at the moment we're just seeing that stronger dollar having the upper hand there. Sterling has been stronger against the euro. We are very much in a sideways trend here. We see that there on the trend, just teetering along the base of the cloud there. So that's quite key as well. But for the moment, sterling has the upper hand against the euro. Bitcoin sitting at $32,000 this morning. We really are sitting quite close on support here at the moment, and that level is just really critical. If we break below the level that we're seeing here, 30,000 would unwind this 107 upside target, so that's really quite key there. That's on the chart. We see here the 107 target for Bitcoin would be deactivated if we fall through that 30,000 level, so that's one to watch as well. The S&P 500 index had quite a strong session yesterday after a weak session on Friday. Still bearish below the cloud on the 60-minute chart. We do have upside targets, but for the moment we're just struggling to push to new highs there. And we have been relatively flat for the last several weeks, although the long-term trend is still very much in train, as we can see here as we run up the hill. So still looking pretty good on the long term. And the Nasdaq, much the same, although we do seem to be just slowing down a little bit here. We see that just showing up in the chart there as we roll over, so that's quite key. But on the 60-minute chart we are still bullish on all three time frames with upside targets, so it's too early to call an end to the market, although we are seeing that slow down. The futures this morning slightly down on the S&P future. The Nasdaq E-mini down 1/3%, does suggest the market will open lower today in the US. The VIX volatility sitting at 18, not looking especially high historically. We've seen over the last year we've been really trending back down to levels that we saw back in 2019. So the fear index is pretty much under control at the moment. We are just seeing a short-term rise here, so that's quite key. We did get to 2180 last week on the VIX, but for the moment looking stronger. The end of last week just saw some fear creeping in, but that's receded again the start of this week. FTSE futures up 0.25% this morning, still struggling to push higher, not anywhere near making a new high in the UK at the moment, so that's quite key. The DAX in Germany also just struggling at the moment. Stock markets generally are struggling, and the CAC 40 in Paris looking a little bit better and just holding on to its cloud there. But European markets relatively subdued. Japan had a really weak session on Monday, has bounced right back up 3.2% overnight, so looking strong again, bouncing on the cloud. Of course, we expect the clouds to work quite well in Japan, given that they're a Japanese technique. We see here we're just holding that support on the cloud, so that's looking pretty good as well. The Hang Seng was down 0.2%, and the Chinese market was up 0.8%, and the Sensex in India up 0.4%, and the resource-laden Aussie market up 1.5%. So looking strong there, and holding on to that high that we've seen there, where it cleared the level that we saw last month. We'll take a look at the energy mix in a minute, but just looking at some of the soft commodities, we've got sugar down 0.7%. That has been declining in recent weeks. Wheat is up 0.6%. Soft commodities still looking strong on the medium term and the long term, and look at all those upside targets. So we are still seeing that. And corn has looked very strong. A little bit of a high pole there on the point and figure chart, but we do still see a recovery there, and the long-term trend very much in train on corn, so that's quite key as well. Watch for a low below that low that we saw previously. Gold sitting at 1777, down 1/3% this morning. Short term we are weak, but we are finding cloud support here. Just see how we're just really just right on the cloud there, and again on the lagging line as well, and on the weekly chart right on the cloud. The key thing to watch, of course, for gold is, will we make a lower low? That's what it's all about, and that's what we have to watch for, the lower low. Silver is also just weaker at the moment. What we're really waiting for is a break of this triangle pattern. That will be explosive. A move above 30 on silver will be very explosive indeed, and that's what we just have to watch for the moment. So watch for that breakout. But for the moment, this is a long-term chart. This will take time to play out, of course. Platinum has had a pretty tough time the last week or two, falling away back below the cloud on the medium-term chart. And you see with the action here on the short-term chart, just bouncing. And palladium had an even bigger move last week, down 10% in a day, just falling away. We've had that bounce. We're seeing it starting to come back. We will get an upside target there, so if you're trading precious metals, keep an eye on that. Copper still looking strong above the $4 mark, and the big one is bond yields. We did go as low as 1.35% on bonds, remembering this big upside target to 3.27% on the 10-year yield is only negated when we fall below 1% on the bond yield, and that's looking unlikely, so that is still in train. And even though we've fallen very heavily over the last week, we are right back to where we were before that Fed announcement last week. So bonds markets, much the same picture. The 30-year yield still above 2% and not looking likely to hold below 2% for very long. We did go below there last week, but only intraday. The big one is also the German bond future, the Bund, and if we fall below that 170 mark, that is looking pretty bad for the Bund. We do have downside targets pointing that way, 165, 163. The very long-term trend in bond yields would be broken, so that's one to watch. Now taking a look at the energy mix, Brent Crude has activated this morning this upside target to 96.40, so that's quite key for the moment, and we are just seeing that is a new upside target. We've been bullish on Brent on crude oil for the last 3-4 weeks, and that's what we've seen play out. We've had a very strong time. The targets have not been that exciting. We've got good upside targets here on this short-term 1-minute chart. If you're trading crude oil, that's what you need to be watching. We've got good upside targets there, but this new upside target, some 30% higher, is a surprise. WTI, we're seeing also targets here to the upside, and if we look at US nat gas, that is coming back as well to 321. We have actually been bearish gas. We were neutral this week on the basis that we did see upside targets here, but we are below the cloud, so not as clear as crude oil. Coal still continues to look strong. We've got good upside targets. The 1 minute charts on your OTC data will be key. And emissions, all eyes on emissions. This 54 level on emissions is really critical, but we are looking like we will break back above that level, so that's quite key. We're seeing the break there, and we've got good upside targets still in train for emissions, so keep an eye on that. If you're trading emissions, keep an eye on your 1 minute charts there. We've now got enough visibility on the UK emissions price launched last month to start to give us a little bit of a clue. We are short-term bearish below the cloud, but we do have some upside targets here on the 1 minute chart. Keep an eye on that, and we're seeing here we've got 46.50 and 47 as the targets at the moment there. Gas markets continue to look strong. We're bullish on gas this week, up a further 2% this morning, breaking to new highs. MVP looking strong. Got good upside targets, one here to 81.30. These are on the exchange traded contracts. If you're trading gas, keep an eye on your OTC 1 minute charts on Trayport. You can use the Updata, of course, running on Trayport. And we see here we've got good upside targets as well. German power is up 1.3% this morning, just nudging new highs. Again, we were bullish on power this week. That's looking strong for a breakout, and looking even stronger than the emissions chart. We've got a new upside target to 69.80. Looks like we will start to push to new highs on power, so that's looking strong as well. The quarterly, a little bit of a clue there, up 2% there as well. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.